Good afternoon and welcome to my message of the day. I'm Warren, the rector here at St. Columba's. It seems to me that most of us have heard of the 10 commandments, even if most of us would struggle to recite the 10 when asked. You could try that as a little experiment after you've listened to this video, see how many of the 10 you can recite without too much trouble. And there are a variety of ways of dividing the 10 up. It's been pointed out that the first few are about God and the remainder are about people. And that fits very nice and neatly with Jesus's summary of the law. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. And of course, the first commandment, have no other gods beside me, is the crucial commandment, and everything else flows from it. However, the 10th commandment, it's a very interesting commandment because it shifts the focus from external action, like murdering someone, to an internal disposition. An internal disposition which we can hide from the world around us. So we could still be breaking the 10th commandment and no one need know. And that is to covet. Actually, the word is just to desire what other people own. And I think it's funny, if you read the commandment, it's quite long. You shall not, we translate it as covet your neighbour's whatever, it goes on. And then finally, it's almost like in exasperation, the commandment then says, oh, whatever is owned by your neighbour, don't covet that. It's like anything that your neighbour owns. So actually, and we think of coveting about stuff. So you covet your neighbour's nice new car or something. But actually, if you read the 10th commandment, what is consistent through it is indeed stuff that we covet, not told not to covet. But the most consistent element in it is actually our neighbour. You go and read it and see how it flows. It's don't covet your neighbour's whatever, and then, or just don't covet anything that your neighbour owns. It's like coveting is linked to the neighbour rather than the stuff. And that's crucial. It's an understanding that in actual fact we come to covet something because someone else has it or someone else thinks it's important. That's part of what Genesis 3, the fall, Adam and Eve and the fruit and disobeying God is about. The serpent says, oh, did God say to you, don't eat from that fruit? Which is to say, God's keeping it to God's self. It must be really important, really good. And so coveting, the desire, is inflamed. You can see that with in the preschool with kids. One kid's got a toy, really enjoying themselves. Another child comes, well, that must be pretty good because that child's enjoying it so much. There's a fight for the toy. The second child gets the toy, then realises actually it's not as good as I thought. Oh, throws it away. It was actually because it was about the first child's enjoyment of it. It must be good. We covet, we desire that which our neighbour thinks is important, good, or that we think we interpret them as thinking it's good or whatever, and that we should have it. And it's not as if we're consciously thinking this, as I'm thinking this, putting two and two together and coming up, oh, I should really covet that car. It's at an unconscious level. It's at a deeper level going on. This is why advertising works, of course. Advertisers link what they're trying to sell to what we think is important and link it to what someone that we might think is a model of what is important. And because it always astounds me that movie stars and people who singing stars, pull such weight with their opinion. I mean, really, often when they speak, you just think, right, who cares, or something. Lots of people do. Somehow they've come to use that star as a model for what they should think is important. Now, this touches on our discipleship of Jesus, because if you look at Jesus, what does he desire? He desires what God desires. He is the person who knows what God desires by heart. And we follow Jesus because he is teaching us what to desire. And that's a crucial point, because often as we meet our own desires, which might be misplaced, the answer is not particularly, there might be a place for this to say, oh, I shouldn't do that. But actually, the antidote is to follow Jesus, to learn from him what to desire. What is it that God desires? Jesus the Son knows what the Father desires. We, as children of the Father, can learn from Jesus what to desire. So we can displace those alien desires with the true desire for God, which can bring us fulfillment. That is, in a nutshell, actually, what discipleship of Jesus is: to learn what God desires, which will be for our benefit. And we learn that from Jesus. And you can trust Jesus. When all the doctrines of the church, we make extraordinary claims about Jesus, like he is the human face of God. And that is true, but also it tells us that we can trust him, that what he comes to desire, which he learns from God, we can trust what he desires so that we can mimic him. Discipleship in a nutshell. Thank you. Hope you found that helpful. Bye-bye.